Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bro.Diallo Wednesday evening Q&A. I want to just get straight to the Q&A. But I do have some things I want to say, but I just say this. Back in the early 80s, Dr. Bobby Wright said the greatest threat to African people was Mentacide. And every day of my life, that is demonstrated to be true. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. It's just Mentacide is the greatest threat to African people, more so than anything else you can name. And I don't think we give it enough attention. I don't think we discuss it enough. I don't think we have in place enough of our professionals, activists, revolutionaries, thinkers, philosophers speaking to this and attacking this. Mentacide is truly the number one threat. And Bobby Wright said that Mentacide was the deliberate and systematic destruction of a group's mind, with the ultimate goal being the extirpation of that group. And he said Mentacide manifests itself in a people being ahistorical, apolitical, and anti-analytical. And those things maybe it's like, so what? Where does that relate to resources, to gun violence, and to all the physical material things? But, if you destroy our mind, if you destroy our capacity to comprehend what's going on around us, you destroy any chance we have of correctly addressing it, no matter how much energy, resources, money we put towards an issue. Without a proper diagnosis and understanding, there's no hope you can give them. I mean, in fact, a lot of races like the bell curve. Charles Murray said, argued that, affirmative action and programs that you give to black people is pretty much throwing water down a bottomless well, because, no amount of interventions can save or help black people because of our lack of intellectual capacity. But he was wrong about that. He was extremely wrong about that. But, he was wrong about the source of that. And he also said that it was biological and genetic. But, one element of that is true is, if intellectually, mentally, psychologically, culturally, we're not properly oriented or established, then, pretty much what we have, the resources that we have will be a liability, no matter how much resources we have in abundance. We just look at all these black inventors. I just got into it with the sister who wanted me to celebrate, said that we should all celebrate one of those sisters, one of those hidden coloreds. They left off the ED, the black folks they kept in the basement at NASA, living computers who were creating for white people, for the white empire capacity to rule the world and to rule space. And she said we should celebrate those black people. And I said, why? I'm like, if you, and the sister said, well, a black woman created GPS. And I'm like, and she was like, well, you use GPS in your phone, which is true, but ultimately the GPS came out of DARPA. It was a military weapon, and it is primarily used by the military to dominate the globe. And I'm like, why are we celebrating these people? Because I promise you, if a brilliant white man created technology or some method that allowed Africans to secure liberation or dominance, he wouldn't be a white history hero. He would be a villain like John Brown. And John Brown didn't really even leave us a lasting anything we can continue to profit from. So anyway, just been thinking about that. What got me thinking about that is just black people so much online have been regurgitating uncritically right-wing talking points and right-wing points of views, and black people who are justifiably against the Biden administration, instead of going further left, they go to the right of Biden, or they ally with the white people or the conservatives or MAGA heads who dislike Biden, and they think that they have common cause with them on their anti-Biden hatred, when they hate Biden for not being openly racist. And if you hate when you hate Biden for being racist, you are not allies. But so many mental black people, even conscious black people, I see doing that. It's disheartening. Wears on me sometimes. But anyway, good evening. I'm glad you joined me. This question, Q&A, questions, answers, comments, thoughts, criticisms. If I don't know the answer, we'll see if we can suss it out together or address it some other time when we have an opportunity to suss out the answer. Welcome everyone that's listening. Like, share, subscribe, support. And for a long time, I used to be a passive consumer of black media, and I've paid the price. Like I said, one of my favorite podcasters went off the air after years of asking for support. So when there's media that I think is needed, I'm going to I try to share it. I try to point other people to it. I try to support financially when I can. We can't afford to have passive consumers of revolutionary media, because revolutionary media is endangered. It's endangered. I'm seeing a lot of pseudo revolutionary media, a lot of reactionary media. So if you find myself or anyone to be sincerely revolutionary, sincerely Pan-African, and sincerely of value, please like, share, subscribe, and support in whatever way you can. You see scrolling across the bottom of screens various ways you can support beyond like, sharing, and subscribing. With all that said, with the commercial and everything out of the way, I'm ready to get into the Q&A. Let's just get this over with, because man, I'm just not in a good mood this evening. Right on. Thank you. Right on. So, let's see. Tap. Squall, greetings. Well, it seems like things are exponentially worse. Kamari states about the black condition. Well, for black people in the United States and to various degrees around the world, this is what's sad. Things are not worse in terms of black people's status. We're no longer in chattel slavery, and we're no longer under Jim Crow. What's more tragic than things like our condition or status getting worse is for us to have greater potential. Black people, we have literacy. We have majority of our people are literate. We have more and more every year. More and more black people are coming out of universities with degrees. More and more black billionaires. More and more black people understanding everything from economic manipulations. More and more black people are having knowledge of their African heritage and history, and we can even go get our cheeks swabbed and find out the. We have so much, and so when we're suffering with the means of challenging our suffering, if we're oppressed but we have the means of challenging our oppression, we are it's like Jesse Jackson said, and I'm not a fan of Jesse Jackson, but when you're right, we're doing less with more. Our liberation was secured by illiterate slaves whose bodies were ravaged by so many ailments. There's been more and more books coming out about the conditions of Africans and chattel slaves, to talk about the parasites that enslaved Africans were infected with because of the low quality food and water and shelter, the chronic diseases, how their bodies were broken. When they found that African mass grave in Manhattan, they found that Africans were literally worked to death. They did scans of the bones and found that the bones, the tendons and ligaments of the bones were literally ripped apart, like the muscle was ripped apart from the bone. Neurological diseases, diseases of malnutrition in the bodies of enslaved Africans. We all know about the whippings on the back, but even if you never got the whip of the back, we were under such poor conditions that You know, it was really bad. And then during Jim Crow, my wife's father recounted a story who was born and raised in Macomb, Mississippi. And one day he was walking to school in the morning in Mississippi, and he found a black man who was buried up to his mid chest in the soil. They dug a hole and put a black man in it, erect up to his mid chest, and then they threw stones or bowling balls at his head and brutalized him to death. And you know, African children walked home to see that. And there was no protest. There was no march. This black man's name wasn't recorded in the history books. And that was a normal day. You know, where the song Strange Fruit talked about bodies hanging from the trees and blood on the roof. Shit was really fucking bad during Jim Crow. You know, it bothers me how black people like, segregation, integration was the worst thing that ever happened to us. You know, we sit in a lot of comfortable positions and reminisce about a past that never existed, because we look at some statistics and we saw back in 1940, 70% of black people had a higher rate of marriage than white people. And so we long for those times. And you're either ignorant or menticidal to want to go back to those times. But we want to go back to those times because of the quote unquote freedoms or the opportunities that our ancestors won for us. From chattel slavery to Jim Crow, we are squandering it. We're balling out with it, and then when it's gone, we're losing ground that was won for us by people we mock. I'm not my ancestors. You get this hand. I wouldn't march and let somebody spit on me. I wouldn't march and let them yell, call me a nigger. I wouldn't tolerate it. But you so bad you wouldn't tolerate it, but you're tolerating losing the small increments of progress that we got from back then. So things are exponentially worse, not because our condition is worse than our ancestors, but because we can't even take the reprieve that they want for us, the small amount of resources and relief that they want for us, and advance. We're going backwards. We're doing less with more. We got more of everything than our ancestors in this country had, and we're doing less with it. We're losing ground when people who came before us, I literally said, you know, Marcus Garvey built the greatest, most feared movement, mass movement of Africans in history. And most of them were sharecroppers. The UNIA was not made up of black athletes, the people we think are going to save us now, black celebrities, wealthy black entrepreneurs. Marcus Garvey, the UNIA rank and file were sharecroppers, housekeepers, maids, rail workers. And we got malnourished, illiterate or functionally illiterate African people who accomplish more than our educated and resourced black folks. So when we say things are getting worse, we have to make that caveat. We're allowing things to get worse. It's not just getting worse on its own magically. We're allowing things to get worse. But not even necessarily worse. We ain't where we was. And I mean, how fucked up you got to be to long for Jim Crow? How fucked up do we have to be sitting here in 2022 reminiscing about how things were better under Jim Crow? What the fuck is, and we act like it's not on us. But I digress. That wasn't even a question. Sean says, but why a lot of us are so inside intellectual, but why don't we want to actually see the truth? Why is it so hard for us to actually take the time out to actually think critically about the situation? Let me try to answer that in sections. First of all, a lot of us aren't intellectual. Intellectual is not about your degrees or your formal education. Intellectual is basically the status or a person who engages intellectually, who engages in intellectual endeavors. So many people aren't intellects, and we make the mistakes because we look at people who are well trained, You know, there's a difference between education and training. Training basically teaches you to execute task. And doctors are trained, just like hamburger flippers are trained. Training teaches you to execute a task. Intellectualism allows you to conceptualize and construct, you know, basically reality, to construct social relations. So a trained doctor is like Dr. Ben Carson, who went to school, mastered his skill, became a prominent member of his field. An intellectual is Dr. Bobby E. Wright, who took that training and said, well, here's training. How do I engage my training? How do I utilize my training and my status to affect this reality, to impact and direct this reality? So you got a lot of educated black people that'll tell you how to succeed under capitalism. That's a trained monkey. That's not a fucking intellectual. I'm going to teach you how to get the bag. I'm going to teach you how to function within this structure conceptualized by others. And these people are like, oh, I made $1 million, and now I'm going to teach you how to make $1 million, as opposed to I made $1 million and I'm going to allocate those resources to fucking dismantling this whole shit because it's unjust and it has no justification for existing. So a lot of times we confuse education and training, or intellect, with training. And so to actually see the truth, you know, the reason I think truth is hard to come by in this time is because truth, like many other things, has been commodified. Truth is now something people think they can go out and select. There's something they can consume. And we believe that there are multiple truths. And you hear people say, well, this is your truth, that's my truth. You have your truth, I have my truth. And we treat truth like any other consumer item, because everything is a consumer item. We even look at our mates, our lifetime intimate partners, as consumer items. What's your credit score? What school? Well, you know, what do you bring to the table? We size each other. Everything has been turned into a product, which is the goal of capitalism. The capitalism is to bring everything, including human existence, under the realm of capital and control of capitalism. If it's outside of capital, if it can't be consumed, if it can't be marketed as a product, tagged and consumed, and a price can't be put on it, then it becomes a threat to capitalism. So whether it's an idea or a whole separate country, if it can't be brought up under the umbrella of capitalism, they will attack it. So truth is a commodity now, and people have so corrupted the concept of truth, because truth exists within capitalism and it's a product. Like, if I don't like that truth, I go get a new one. And this was truth last year's truth. I'm going to see what next year's truth is and see if truth next year is better than this year, because the current truth is played out. We act like we can consume truth, you know, but like Kwame Ture said, truth doesn't require us to believe it or to accept it. Truth just is. So people don't see the truth because they believe, they've been indoctrinated to believe that truth is something that can belong to them personally and that they can consume, change at their whim. And it's hard to take time to think. It's because there's so many distractions. There are so many things going on around us at any time. And we have been pretty much educated out of our minds, or indoctrinated out of our minds. It's not hard to think. And one of the reasons why it's really hard to think, it's not really hard to think. One of the main things that I've observed in my environment is thinkers will harm you socially. It's hard to navigate socially if you're a thinker. And I don't care if it's a family gathering or a party. You know, I used to go to clubs and go to concerts, and I would look at all these black people having a good time. And my mind would be racing like, man, look at all these energies and resources. Everywhere I go, I walk in my neighborhood and I see empty land, and I'm thinking we could cultivate that land and grow food on it. It translates a lot into physical pain. To be a critical thinker is heartbreaking in a society that's inherently unjust, and to be a race of a people who are under genocidal oppression. You see it in everything. You can't, you know, People people call me the Grinch of Pan-Africanism. They say I'm so negative. People come and ask me and want me to say positive shit. And I don't even know why people want me to say positive shit, because there's so much positivity out there. Why you need my positivity? There's so much. It's like right now in Chicago, there's snow everywhere. You know, it's wherever you look, there's snow all around you. That's how positivity and inspirational #inspire. Why you can go to Will Smith and all these other celebrities to tell you, achieve your dreams and tell you how great, Tyler Perry's a rags to riches, how he slept in his car and now he's a billionaire with private jets. Why do you need me to fucking add to that shit? I'd like to at least try to give the community something unique. So all that to say is, if you truly become a critical thinker, you ever see that Saturday Night Live skit, Debbie Downer? So people come to me. I get this all the time, online and in life. Can't you just let people have fun? So a lot of times people, just from social and peer pressure, will just be like, I'm gonna just shut my brain off. If you go look at the Black Panther and you see everybody in the community Wakanda forever, and then here you come like, well, that's some fucking Western propaganda. People hate on you. So I think that's a big thing, just society. A lot of us will marry or start relationships with non-thinkers. And then you get with a non-thinker, they'll bring you down like Bobby did Whitney. So I think this is a society that does not praise or uplift critical thought, or critical thinkers. So it's easier. It makes it easier to navigate the society if you're a non-thinker, critical thinker. And you can think about what you're going to wear tomorrow. You can think about who's going to make it to the playoffs. But if you start to connect too many dots, you're just an unpleasant, unpopular person. What causes Mentacide? See, that's a good question. I'm always looking at, because it's so broad. Everything that comes into our life, where Dr. Neely Fuller talks about the 7 areas of human relations. See if I can pull that up. And it's been added to. Well, now it's the 9 areas of people activity. So it has been 9. I don't know why I've been saying 7. But peep this. These are basically the 10 areas of people activity. Let me just take that off for a second. Right? Neely Fuller said that everything, when you're interacting with another person, everything you do can be defined in these. Every time you interact with someone or a group of people, or you're engaged in any activity, it falls into one or more of these classifications: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, war, and health. And so every element of this has mentacidal implications. Every single one of these. It's probably easier to see capitalist economics, education, and entertainment, and how that would provoke menticide or degrade or remove African people's ability to think critically, or willingness. Labor is another one. If you look at Marx's alienation of labor and how labor destroys one's mind. Law, I guess when you start to look at things like this, it becomes a little easier to see. But in all areas of human relations are the values, the priorities, the customs and cultures. All 9 areas of human activity are dominated by the West, white folks, Europe-centric. And so it was built on the dehumanization and hyper-exploitation of Africans and other populations. So when you have every element of your society saturated with racism and African dehumanization, that is the source of menticide. And in order to be free of menticide, you literally have to, in every element, in economics, you go earn $1 or you spend $1. You got to be thinking, the racism elements, the Black empowerment elements. You go to school, you got to be like, is this teacher lying to me? What is this teacher's agenda? What's going on here? You go to work, you entertainment. I want to just listen to a song. Is it dehumanizing, degrading me and my people? You go to work. Did I not get that raise because I'm black, or they discriminate? Why didn't I get that promotion? Law, did the cop pull me over because I'm black, or because what did I really do? Politics. We keep voting for these politicians and they making laws not helping us. Religion, and it goes on and on. So in order to not be menticidal, you have to be in constant combat in every area of human activity. Every time you interact with another person, you have to be in constant psychological and critical battle, and it's fucking exhausting. It's exhausting. You have to be in what's called perfect paranoia. And some people say, I give up. I'm gonna just listen to this song and just enjoy the beat. I don't give a fuck what the rapper's saying. I'm gonna go to church, and I know, and my walk with God is personal, and I know the religion or that I'm a part of has done some bad things in the past, but that ain't me, and me and my God is personal. So you just have to turn that shit off. But so or if you casually or passively engage or navigate this society, your mind will be systematically destroyed in every element, conscious and unconscious. Here's something the European understood, and this is what I tell black people who talk about making it and black empowerment. I tell black people all the time. Europeans didn't go anywhere and integrate into anybody else's economic system, even when they were the dominant force. And the few times when they did have to quote unquote integrate, they did so with the full intention of subverting and replacing that system eventually. Some places they did it rapidly. Some places they did it over generations. Some places they did it with open warfare. Other places they did it with diplomacy. But the Europeans did not come to the Americas and say, well, what is the Native American governing system? What is the Native American religion? What is the Native American economic system? What are the Native American sexual customs, their gender norms and their sexual? Then I'm going to do all of that and then defeat the Native American by succeeding within his system and outcompeting him with adopting his culture. He didn't do it in Africa. But we have generations of African people who claim to be conscious, militant, whatever, that tell us through capitalism, through the nuclear family, through Allah or Jesus or Yahweh or some other white god, through militancy, marching in the street with guns like the Confederates or the blue coats, red coats, even their methods of warfare. We believe within their system, we can overthrow them by outdoing them in their shit, out earning them, out studying and reading them. But none of that's going to work until we say, okay, our intent as a people, as a culture, is to subvert and replace. We've never had that. We want justice. You can get justice without subversion and replacement. We want equality. We want resources. We want jobs. We want education. Until we get it upon ourselves, the only way to save it, and we used to talk about genocide all the time. That was another trick. This system is not about genocide. This system is about omnicide. Everything dies. Everything's going to die and has to be subordinated, dominated, and eventually killed. And I tell people all the time, these self-hating Negroes, if you don't love black people enough to join the Black Revolution, do you love the polar bear? Do you love the sperm whale? Do you love prairie dogs? Because anything that's alive and living that you care about is being diminished, contaminated, and eventually driven to extinction in this system. So everything causes menticide in this system. And the only way to cure to address your menticide is to be in constant intellectual, cultural, social, collective conflict with everything in society. And it makes you look fucking crazy, or at least make you look like a hater. I wish I had a better, more detailed answer, but I could start going into the specific things within the 9 areas of human relations that provoke or that destroy Africans' people intellectual capacity, but we'd be here a lot longer than I am capable of. But you did ask what is the most pressing cause of menticide. So I guess I can give top 5. Number 1 is religious indoctrination. Religious indoctrination. Religious indoctrination. Faith is anti-intellectual inherently. And blessings and all that stuff. So I would say number one is religion. And I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what your religion is. Because a lot of people are about to scurry into their holes. Oh, he's talking about Christianity. Or he's just talking about people who believe Jesus is white. Or he's just talking about Muslims. I'm talking about every single religion, including African religions. Here's the thing about African religions. Anything you create under freedom, you can have to either abandon it or revolutionize it when you come under oppression. Things that worked for us under freedom. So a lot of these African, idealists who said all we need to do is learn an African language, wear African garb, and practice traditional African societies. We were doing that when we came under oppression. So if that fucking worked, in the Chinese revolution, the Maoist revolution, you had a lot of Chinese that said we need to return to Confucian. We need to turn to the ancient Chinese culture. And he's like, that's inadequate. Because if ancient Chinese culture was able to defend and encapsulate us, we would have never been under, because we were doing that when we came under conquest. So a lot of people doing traditional African religions are still perpetuating menticide and oppression. If you think Obatala or Shango is going to do anything more for you than Jesus Christ or Allah or the Prophet Muhammad. I hate to say this, and that's when you get in trouble. But I know some brothers who were raised, Yoruba brothers who were raised within an African spiritual context that would say the same thing. A lot of African traditional leaders retard and hamper us. A lot of babalaos are obstruction to African decolonization and liberation efforts. So number 1, and this ain't the worst. This is in no particular order besides me telling you some of the most pressing things that cause menticide. Religion. Number 2, formal education. I don't think I need to go into detail about how formal education is a source of mass indoctrination and menticide for African people. My wife, when she was getting her PhD, I wish I could show y'all her notes. She would just scribble in the notes, don't be educated out of your mind. When I was in school, undergrad, and I had a best friend that I grew up with who was very militant. He used to get on me about not being militant enough. He used to tell me I wasn't militant in high school and undergrad. He was like, oh, you're not militant enough. You need to go even harder against these white folks. You need to be even more militant in your stances and positions. And I'm like, I'm as militant as my analysis will allow me to be. But all I'm saying is he went into become an accountant and study finance. And now he is a bloodthirsty, pro-American, pro-imperialist capitalist. He was literally educated out of his mind. So when you're sitting in a church or amongst spiritual or religious people, or you're engaging black people about how we can secure the bag, those are the 2 of the arenas where you got to have your guards all the way up. Because a lot of, and we always talk about how the Native Americans gave up their land because they were given glass beads and shiny trinkets, and they gave up their lives and their lands and their livelihood, their material livelihood, for trinkets. But then we turn around, they don't even show us trinkets. They show us zeros and ones on a computer screen. So we mock the Native Americans who thinking glass beads were worth something, when we turn around and think ones and zeros represent real wealth. So we done fucking gone further backwards than the natives. So that's number 2. Number 3, there's so many to choose from, is I think in the arena of nationality and identity, patriotism, black people, oh, I'm an African American, I'm a Jamaican, I'm a Nigerian. The colonial borders and the colonial identities. I think when we get wrapped up in that, what does it mean to be an African American, and the ADOS? Black people struggle with patriotism. Oh, do you vote? Do you believe in America? Or I'm an African, and we even got black people messing around with black supremacy. So I think that is another place where we tend to lose our goddamn minds. We idealize the past. We create these artificial identities, and we engage with our African heritage in a cosmetic way. You know, so I think that is an area, and I'm trying to identify, and also a lot of times we think that, oh, I'm pro-black, or I'm pro-African, or I embrace my African features and my African heritage, so I can do no wrong. And we think that when you enter that headspace, you don't have to examine it. It's just good on the surface. So a lot of black people lose their minds in that arena. You know, and if you want to see examples, just go to your, after the pandemic, go to your local Kwanzaa gathering or any African festival or African gathering, where these issues of nationality, race, and identity. So in that arena, I think in our intimate relationships, in terms of sex, in terms of valuing ourselves or identifying how we get into intimate relationships, I see a lot of Mentacide brewing and being created there. High value man, high value woman, what's your credit score, and the nuclear family, the destruction of the black family, and the black man's being kicked out of the home. I see so much madness and Mentacide coming as a byproduct of that, child rearing and wanting what's best for our child. So what's that, 4? And I say finally, probably another easiest ways is how the music, particularly hip hop music, is another means of systematically destroying the black mind. I can get more into that. I'm doing a book review on who stole the soul. I have the book review all written up, so I just have to set up the camera and tape the review on that. So, and entertainment industry is another weaponized thing that's been weaponized. Sex has been weaponized. Music has been weaponized. Everything is a problem. So those are some of the most pressing things that when you're engaged in those things, you got to keep your guard way up. Okay. Our brother Diablo, you and your family as well is healthy. Yes, thank you. But the question I have is why it seemed like every generation we have people who are just anti-intellectual. Well, anti-intellectual is just it's a society. It's just, I think certain people have characteristics, and intellect manifests. Europeans are just finding this out, where several years ago, over a decade ago, there was a lot of books written on emotional intelligence and intuitive intelligence. So the Western capitalist and formal education system for many decades said, there's only one type of intelligence, and that's formal education, and it can be tested, it can be measured, and it can be, structured in education. And decades ago, this new where white people go back and discover, because you find native cultures and non-Western cultures understood that intelligence manifests itself in different ways of learning, and they came up with kinesthetic learning or theoretical thinkers and things of that nature. So one reason why people may seem to be intellectual is because their nature of their intellect, neurodivergent, the nature of their intellect isn't accepted or respected by the formal education system. But I think nobody's really anti-intellectual. It's just how they express their intellect. Like, if you came to me and asked me anything about basketball, I know Kobe died in a helicopter crash, and LeBron James is probably the top guy. He plays for the Lakers. But my knowledge of what's going on in basketball, stats of any individual player, I don't know who's going to the playoffs. I don't know who. I think Steph Curry won last year. I don't know. I know very little about sports. And what I do pick up is just what comes my way as I glean, but I don't really latch on to it unless a ball chaser says something, off the cuff, or a ball chaser comes up and says, well, I'm going to save black folks or get into black. If a black ball chaser doesn't become political or say something political related to African people, I tend to pay no attention to it. So I'm ignorant in that arena, even willfully ignorant, even more so in football and baseball. I know even less. My wife was just saying on the way home, she was like, I can only name one current football player, and that's Colin Kaepernick. And I said, Colin Kaepernick isn't playing. So she's like, well, I literally can't name a football player. So a lot of times anti-intellectualism looks like people just don't apply their intellect to a thing. And the reason is because intellect has been associated with income. Why dedicate mind or mental energy to something that isn't going to earn you fiat, that isn't going to earn you money? And you have people even now, they list every year what college degrees bring in the most money. So where should you put? So the reason there's so many intellectual people in nowadays is because intellect being commodified means that people aren't curious and pursue curiosity anymore. So if I sit and read like these books I got here, I just sit and read these books. If it ain't gonna bring me no money, why am I investing the time? And if it ain't bringing me money, at least bring me some pleasure. If it ain't bringing me money or pleasure or giving me an escape, it's like, well, I'm not getting money reading these books. I'm not getting no pleasure because many of the books have very unpleasant topics and bring up very unpleasant things. But I'm intellectually curious. So this generation is anti-intellectual because it's more profitable. You're better off not engaging intellect if your main concern is your personal security and bringing resources to yourself. Past generations, like Africans, intellect could be deadly. If you were labeled an uppity Negro, then your life could be in danger. Malcolm X's father was a preacher, and he was a Garveyite, and he was labeled uppity. When he was allegedly murdered by the Klan, they said they wanted nothing to do with his wife. Nobody would allow her to do laundry or clean their homes because nobody wanted to be the associated with the wife of an uppity Negro. So anti-intellectualism in Africa during Jim Crow and chattel slavery, you had black people that played dumb, that would shuffle and stutter when they didn't have a stutter because being not threatening the very fragile intellectual ego of our oppressors could bring death to us. So every generation has its own reasons for anti-intellectualism, but anti-intellectualism is generally not really an individual thing. It happens in groups. One of the main ways to become anti-intellectual is if you dwell within anti-intellectual circles or you adopt an anti-intellectual ideology, like being a Republican or being a football fan or something like that. So that's why there are groups where individual intellect or applying or asserting your intellect will make you a member of the out group, whereas playing dumb or actually being dumb makes you more embraced. And human beings, we're primates. We are social primates. The most socially the primate that's most desperate for social connection and most needing of social connection. So what I see, widespread anti-intellectualism is always tied to group dynamics. It's always tied to group dynamics. So that's why generation after generations, if we have group dynamics that requires you to be stupid, then you're going to be stupid or become accustomed to being an outcast. And that's why when we form our groups and our collections, we need to cultivate intellects and encourage intellectualism. Even now, I get attacked as people, I say something like, well, this is a thing I thought and a thing I think. And people don't come to me and it's like, well, this thing you think is inaccurate because of A, B, and C, or this thing you think is inaccurate because of 1, 2, 3, and you can become more astute in your assessment if you do A, B, C. That I never get that. Well, what have you done? What are you doing? Like I'm thinking. That's not something that's valued, and nobody wants to pay an African for their thoughts. If you want to get paid, you got to have a wicked jump shot. You can rap, or you can regurgitate some European thoughts. Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that was a good question. Good evening, Diallo. What do you think is true goal of right-wing racists who is anti-interventionist or anti-war? First of all, I've never seen a right-winger who's anti-war. I've never seen a right-winger who's anti-war. So if you can maybe name the right-winger who's anti-war, then I can maybe tell you their motivations. But anti-interventionism, you find right-wingers who are anti-interventionists because intervention is through propaganda is basically the U.S. trying to help other nations. So the U.S., the rhetoric behind intervention is the U.S. is intervening to give aid or support to some other nation that is struggling, whether it's a coup d'etat, whether it is a famine, whether it is they are communists have infiltrated their government. And so the reason right-wingers are anti-intervention is because they don't want to give aid or support to anyone else. It's basically out of selfishness. So they support the U.S. Right-wingers right now are like, let's go to war with Russia. Let's go to war with China. But why are we in Haiti? So if you're in Haiti or the Kurds, when the Kurds were being attacked by Saddam Hussein, and they were like, well, we need to protect the Kurds because they were our allies in the Gulf War, the right-wingers are like, screw them. So we can go to war if it's about conquest and defeating our enemies. But we can't go to war if it's about helping people who are being massacred in the Balkans or helping the Uyghur Muslims in China. Now, it's all bullshit. But that's the reason why you will find a right-winger will go on a stage at a political rally or stand up and say, we want to stop America intervening in this nation, because there is the context of intervention is they're intervening to help. They're intervening to give aid. And they don't want to give aid to other nations because they are racist and the needy nations, because those same right-wingers that say, well, we don't give aid to needy nations, want to support Israel and say nothing of the billions of dollars that go to Israel. Because it says nothing about the U.S. troops stationed in Europe. So if you have a right-wingers, oh, bring our troops home, close Guantanamo. The United States has military bases still in Germany. There's a saying in diplomatic circles is when the U.S. comes in, it never leaves. You don't see them saying, let's close the base in Okinawa or close military bases around the U.S. So right-wingers are pro-war because they're bloodthirsty. They're anti-intervention because the word intervention context means that they're trying to help someone, which they aren't. But even if fake pretending that like you want to help, it's too much for racist right-wingers. What is it going to take for our people to wake up from this mentacidal condition? It's going to take for the people who are already awakened to better pull our resources, our time, talent, and resources to intensify the struggle. The more the people who are already awoken are able to demonstrate to the non-awoke black masses the viability of our ideas and our agendas, the more of them will win to our side and awaken us. And you know, H. Rap Brown was credited at one time saying is that I don't create revolutionaries. The system creates revolutionaries. So when the system does repression, racism, atrocities against people, then those people look for alternatives to the system or drives people into poverty and deprivation. But the problem is they do create that doubt in the system of the people. But at that same time, the revolutionary needs to have some means of embracing those people. So we just had years, at least a decade of ongoing people from Baltimore to Ferguson, Missouri, to Oakland, to Seattle, in Minnesota. They got shit happening in places we didn't even know black people lived. And black people take to the streets. And there's no black revolutionary organization that says, if you're pissed off, here's a constructive way for you to exercise, to fight for justice. Here's an effective way. We don't have the media infrastructure. We don't have the organizational infrastructure. We don't have the material infrastructure or economic structure set up to integrate these people into revolution. So our people rise up, they shake their fists, they might break and burn some shit, but then they have to just go back to the very system they were just rebelling against, because we have no alternative system. So what we need is for we, in the downtime, where our people aren't in the streets, where there is no uprising, no ongoing protest, in this time, we need to be creating that infrastructure. And say the next time, if there's 100 black people in the street, we're going to make sure 10 of those black people are recruited into our revolutionary organization and given the support to do the work. We don't do that. We who claim to be woke, we giving our money to motherfucking con men and demagogues to build school. Y'all gave thousands of dollars to Polite to buy Bugattis to put blonde hair, blue eyed white women in. So that's what it's going to take. It's on us. It's on the revolutionary to make revolution. It's not on the black. When you're upset that black people are not engaged in revolution, you can only be mad at the revolutionaries. You can only be mad at the revolutionaries. No one else. It's our responsibility, not just to make revolution, but to reproduce ourselves and to expand our struggle. And that's what it takes. And we are not willing to do that. I walk into a room of black people who claim to be revolutionary, but they're not willing to engage in revolutionary struggle. Okay, revolutionary-minded courage to challenge the status quo means woefully outmatched by the illusionary benefits offered by the status quo. It is the matrix cipher paradigm of put back in a power plant. Yeah, I grow weary of the matrix analogy, but you're right. There is a dichotomy I see between African nationalists and African Marxists, whereby either culture or economics must be preceded in our struggle. What are your thoughts? The culture is economics. So I don't see, if your economics aren't born of your culture, then you're lost. So culture is economics. So I think that's a stupid argument. The European economy is born out of the European mentality, the European literally value system, morality that consume all. Abraham Lincoln once said, all the European wants is a plot of land and the land adjacent to that land. And he thought that was a moral statement. But if all you want is a plot of land and the land adjacent to that land, then you basically have come up with a system for global conquest. So your economy is defined by your value system, by your culture. So anybody that separates economy from culture, or thinks economy precedes culture, or vice versa, then they're running on a hamster wheel and they're never going to win, because they're trying to separate two things that are intimately entwined and unable to separate. So what I say is, Africans have to precede Africans. What should come first is liberation and Pan-African unification and revolution. The economic system is embedded, is our culture. How economics is nothing but how you identify resources, process, harvest, distribute resources, and the tools you use to do that shit. And if your value system is everybody has worth, everybody has value, everybody deserves a certain amount of some shit, then it's inherently going to, if I don't know how your culture cannot be reflected in your economics. How can it not be? How can it get out? How can your culture get out in front of your economics, or how can your economics get out in front of your culture? How do you even separate the two? When you tell me that, then I can tell you which can come first. I mean, can you think of anything? Can you show me elements of capitalism that aren't European culture? Or can you show me elements of European culture that aren't capitalism? Even before you named it capitalism, you go back to mercantilism or back to feudalism. All European economic systems, just like all European governing systems, just like all European warfare tactics and systems, have all been European culture. Your culture is your economy, your education, labor law, sex, economics. You know, so I don't think they're separate or can be separate or can be valued one over the other. I think it has to be simultaneous. Who is we? You have to we is us. You have to answer that for yourself. If you don't see yourself in we, then it ain't you. Scrolling down. Indeed it is. All right, here we go. Do you think that the way the race is viewed in Latin America and the Caribbean is a barrier to Pan-African unity? No, it's not. And here's why. If you look at, number one, Pan-Africanism came out of the Caribbean. Pan-African thought was conceived in the Caribbean. It first got its home and was, but Garvey was a Jamaican. You know, George Patmore. I mean, it's just so many of the names. You know, the Rastafarian movement was a Pan-African movement when they wanted to repatriate back to Africa, Sashamoniland and all that. So there's absolutely, and when you talk about Latin America, you know, the majority of African people outside of the African continent live in Latin America. There are more African. The largest population of the African diaspora is Latin America, mainly Brazil. And if you look at Brazilian food, Brazilian culture, Brazilian martial arts, it's all African. If you look at the gods they show, where you in Santeria and in the Catholics, all the Catholic saints in Santeria are actually covered for African gods. So no, as far as how races view it, but as far as how Africans view themselves, the so-called Afro-Latinos, I've never had a conversation. In fact, when I talk about the oneness of African people, when I've talked to African people from Cuba, one of my mentors was an African from Panama. He was fluent in Spanish. I mean, he didn't really have an accent because he was educated here. Let's say Walter Rodney out of Guyana, you know. So no, I think Afro-Latinos and Caribbean Africans, Pan-African credentials are well established. So when our African brothers and sisters in Latin America, and you also see when Black people mobilize in the U.S., there's always calls of solidarity from Haiti, throughout the Caribbean, throughout Central and Latin America. There are a lot of, and also many of us are literally blood related. Dr. John Henry Clark always said that the only difference between a Jamaican, a Haitian, a Brazilian, and a Black American is a boat stop. He also recounted the history about how the Caribbean plantations would buy wholesale, whereas U.S. plantations would buy one by one. So a lot of times a U.S. plantation owner that wanted to divest or move, he wanted to sell wholesale. He would, instead of selling the Africans one by one to his neighbors, he would put them in a lot, take them down to the coast and sell them to the Caribbean. They were literally transferring Africans back and forth. And even post-slavery, the Panama Canal, they came up here to the United States, brought thousands of Africans down to Panama from the United States, Southern Blacks, to dig those trenches, and then left them down there. I knew a girl whose grandfather, or great-grandfather, but I think it was her grandfather, was born and raised in the United States, and African-American, went down to Panama to dig out the Panama Canal, married a Panamanian woman, and wanted to bring her back and was having issues, so he just decided to stay down there. And then his granddaughter later illegally migrated back, and she's here, document. This is years ago. This is 20 years ago, but I'm just saying we are one people, and I've never met a conscious, a conscious African from the Caribbean or Latin America that didn't acknowledge that. Now, you do have Caribbean Uncle Toms and Latin American Afro-Latino coons who don't want no part, but they talk just like the Negroes and Uncle Tom handkerchief head Negroes here. Oh, I ain't no African. They don't even like us there. So you got black people like that all over the world. Mentacide. But if you find a conscious African, I've never seen a conscious African that was not enthusiastically, if not ideologically Pan-African, willing to embrace the reality that we are all of one people. So no, the short answer is no. It is not a barrier. It is the Caribbean literally is the birthplace of Pan-Africanism. But can you blame them if they are socialized the way they are? No. Black people aren't to blame for any of this shit, but we're responsible. Blame is one thing, responsibility is another. I have two sons. They're years apart. So when one son got old enough to babysit the other son, and we black, so when one son was 8 years old, no, we followed the law. It was legal. I think the legal age for a child to babysit another child is, I think, 14. So when my son turned 14, after he turned 14, cross my heart, swear to God, that doesn't exist. When my one son would watch the other, I would have to explain to him blame and responsibility. So when we leave you here to watch your younger brother, well, they're both older now, damn near grown, so this is not an issue anymore. But when we leave you here to babysit your older brother, we go out for our walks or we go to the gym. That was the most thing when we were going out to the gym before the pandemic. We'd leave the boys because we get up early and they generally still be in bed. But we tell him, now you're responsible. You're the man of the house or whatever. And we say, if your brother does something wrong, you're not to blame for his misbehavior. Because hell, he misbehaves when we're here. He's a good kid. But children, how they act. So he's to blame for his behavior, but you're responsible. So you're not going to get in trouble or chastised for something your brother did wrong. But if you do not exercise your responsibility, then that's your problem. So a lot of times, if he was like, well, I didn't even do nothing. Like, no, but you allowed your brother to do something because you didn't follow the instructions we left for you. So blame and responsibility are two different things. We're not to blame for any of this, but we're responsible for addressing it. And the reason we're responsible for addressing it because no one else will. No one else has the incentive or desire to do it. We at least have the incentive, if not the desire. So we're not to blame, but we're not responsible. If you were raised up eating chitlins and praising white Jesus, you're not to blame for that. But you are responsible for educating yourself on proper diet and the fallacy and the lunacy of an African bowing to Jesus. And you have to find the tools necessary to help you to make that leap. Or ally with people who can also help you. Oh, Creamer. Hey, he's the author of this book. Let's see. What's his name? Where is it? Oh, it's up toward it. See? So, Bernard. I don't know if I can call him by his government. But he put his government on the books. So, Mama named him Bernard, I'm calling him Bernard. Anyway, B. Creamer, what would you consider to be the most progressive continental Pan-African organizations on the continent? The EFF, maybe? No, I probably would have said the EFF a couple of years ago. Let me see if I can go to their website. But now I would say this. Oh, they have a Wikipedia page? This is, I would say, the most revolutionary Pan-African group on the continent right now. MOP, Movement of the People, RBG. They just get everything right. Left-wing Pan-African political movement. Of course, this is Wikipedia, so but you can go to mop.org. And this is probably the model. If I was to form and cultivate a Pan-African movement on the continent, it would take the shape of MOP. So you can go to mop.org.ng. But EFF, ain't hating on EFF, but if you ask me the question, I get now. Not that I'm one to judge. It ain't no competition, you know. It's like what that the GD anthem. Stop picking sides. You know, we're not supposed to pick sides. But this movement, I've been following it. I've spoke with the leaders, you know, and they are. You see here, you know, they got Wade B. Nobles. So they're using the revolutionary scholarship of Pan-African scholars. So I would say movement of the people. But I ain't hating on the EFF. That's not to diminish or to take anything away from the EFF, but you the one trying to get us to pick sides or classify. Shame on you. But I would say movement of the people. So, you know, give them a shout out. They're all over social media and they doing it. They doing it the way. So that's what I would say. The most. The most. You're the one say I normally don't do that because I'm like Jesus. I love everybody equally. But you want to compare. Shame on you. I got our scholars trying to create revolutionary beef. Yeah, but he said what's the most? I would say movement of the people. But you can but shout out to the EFF too. Malima, it's all good. It's all great. Let's see. Talk last. Unfortunately, let's see. Say, Jordan, what has been your experience with? Excuse me. What has been your experience with educating and informing everyday 9-to-5 Black people who are trying to survive, but are not connected to the conscious community? It's been pretty bad, but I mean, anything less than 100% is horrible to me. But you know, I've had the privilege of being able to see African people go from, you know, status quo to becoming revolutionary. But I've been around for a long time. It's great when it happens, but I never really get frustrated. I just am happy for the opportunity to plant seeds. But you know, I'll give you one young lady. We had a vegan restaurant way back in like 2006. We had this vegan restaurant, and we had a employee there, a high school girl that would come around after high school to wait tables, clean, and she worked off. We paid her meager wages, being the capitalist that we are, but she made good tips because she was very good at her job. But anyway, she was anti-Black essentially. She was a refugee from Sudan, and she didn't believe that Black Americans were Africans. And she even believed that the Arabs who drove her from her homeland were actually Africans, but African Americans weren't. She believed in the rhetoric. She would tell my wife and I, we're different type of Black people, where most Black Americans are actually criminal. And it just, she had a lot of warped anti-Black ideas. And she was well on her way to be like a Candace Owens, but she was like 17, 18. So I would listen to her. I listened to her and she'd tell me all this stuff, and I would ask her questions. You know, I would just ask her questions like, well, what about this? What about that? I'd ask her about her history and what she knew about her history. I'd ask her about America, because she also believed that America brought African refugees here, and America was a benevolent country that saved her family personally, and that's saving people all over the world. And so anyway, I'd have conversations with her, and I would just ask her questions. I wouldn't like try to be like, well, you're wrong. I didn't tell her she was wrong or anything. We joke around a lot, but she eventually started asking me questions. One of the questions, she was like, why are you always asking me questions? And I'm like, just to try to understand. And she was like, well, can I ask you some questions? So I started telling her stuff. Anyway, long story short, I didn't think I was making a lot of progress with her, but she eventually graduated high school. We sold the restaurant and moved to Chicago. And she eventually graduated high school and went off to college. And out of nowhere, I didn't even know she still had my contact information. She sent me this long letter. It was like, now that I'm at the university, she went to a predominantly white university. She's like, everything you told me and everything, because it also wasn't just me talking to her. Our customers were all the who's who of the like the chairman of the National Black United Front and several other politically active, the local progressive uh, uh, city council members and school board members, everybody who was into politics, Afrocentricity, leaders of various spiritual groups, African-centered spiritual communities, uh, a Khan priestess, and everybody would be in there, and she would just be in this atmosphere of politics. And of course, the white progressives, the white vegans, and the white anarchists would also be in there. So she was hearing all these political dialogues and debates every single day. But she wrote me this long letter talking about basically her awakening. She became aware of everything racism. She said white supremacy, but we know it's white domination, white aggression, white hegemony, imperialism, the efforts that the U.S. Immigration Department and the other institutions that resettled her family were trying to sever her ties and to her, not only to her true culture, but also make sure she wasn't able to make, lasting bonds with the so-called African Americans. She used to say like that, you African Americans. So, that's those. I have many of those stories, not enough, but enough to keep me going, enough to know that what I'm doing here, jawboning on the internet and the little posts I make, it's having impact. But that's like one I count on win. I was able to get an young African lady to embrace the mandate to make a positive contribution to the just aspirations of her people. So I have a few stories like that, and people reach out to me and tell me about it. So, but I just don't really. I set out to just articulate the truth, and then let people do what they want. But for every African I get as an ally or somebody who supports me, I generate 10 people who get mad as hell. Mad as hell, and especially online, it confuses me because people could just like leave me alone. I got my haters are more enthusiastic. Like I have people who hate me that'll come to me and tell me something I wrote or said a decade ago, and I was like, brother, when you said this, and I'm like, wow, you really are good at tracking my evolution and my thoughts and stuff like that, but you hate me. That's confusing as hell. But I guess I figure that somebody will be in be edified or motivated. So that's one of my fondest memories that let me know just keep on doing what I'm doing. I know you're spoken on this, but have you seen this latest iteration of diaspora wars with Tariq and indigenous Americans? I feel like that's a manifestation of Mentacide. What are your thoughts? Yes, Tariq is not just you. I have this thing called victim and vector. Every black person is a victim. Every single black person is a victim of the systems and institutions of white hegemony, genocide, oppression. But you have people who take their sickness and try to infect others. That's when you go from being a victim to a vector. R. Kelly is a vector, not a victim, meaning that R. Kelly was sexually abused and exploited as a child. But he went on, instead of being responsible and seeking help and relief for that issue, he went to prey on others. So he is a vector. So when you are infected with something, you're sick. But when you actively spread that sickness, you become a vector. That is like, and literally in scientific terms, like a mosquito. A mosquito has a parasite, and then it goes and eats and feeds off of you, and then transfers that parasite onto you. That mosquito is called a vector. So that's how I break it down. Because a lot of times we as black people, we want to be sympathetic and empathetic to black people because we all know that we all going through it. But people like Kanye West or Tariq, whether they got the bag or poor, a lot of these so-called gangsters out here, your suffering does not give you a license to impose suffering on other African people, to exploit other African people. And if your suffering is to the extent that you have to lash out violently or in some other dysfunctional or destructive manner, Neely Fuller also point out what he called emergency compensatory justice. No, he called maximum emergency compensatory justice. And the basic rules of that is lash out however you think. The one rule is if you are lashing out against what he calls white supremacy, then The only obligation you have, you can literally do anything you want to do, but you can't not harm another victim of white supremacy. So if you feel that you must lash out, you cannot lash out in a way that harms other victims of white supremacy. Other than that, you're free to do whatever you need to do to work through whatever you're working through. So anyway, Tariq is a vector because he takes his sickness and illness and spreads and tries to spread it to as many other black people as can and get other black people to become sick like him. But I am totally out of the loop on his current conflict. He's always had petty beefs. He thrives off of petty beefs. If he doesn't have an ongoing petty beefs, he goes and provokes one. I guess people could probably say the same about me. But like I said, I'm not trying to spread sickness. I'm trying to revolutionize, mobilize, and inspire my people to organize for Pan-African liberation. He's trying to get black folk to become, parasitic capitalists under the heel of the white capitalists. But yes, Tariq, man, has all the manifestations of Mentacide. He's even more dangerous because he peppers his stuff with some historical facts and stuff like that. And Kwame Ture said a half truth is more dangerous than a full lie. So I think he is an erosive force in our community. But he's essentially very honest about the fact that he is a pimp, he's a hustler, he's a grinder. He's only going to be within the black conscious community or the pro-black movement as long as it generates money. If Tariq thought he could make money doing the Candace Owens things, he would go do the Candace Owens thing. He goes wherever the money takes him. So why the fuck are we paying him to fucking infect our movement in our community? If we stop paying him and paying attention to him, he will go infect some other community with his pencil-thin goatee madness. So other ways, he needs to be brought under the Negro Self-Exposure Protocol. He needs to be exposed for the charlatan demagogue he is. He needs to be isolated and he needs to be expelled. Expose, isolate, expel. Have you seen any fruits of your efforts? If so, what are some of the methods, resources we can copy? Shit. Good question. But let me not be negative. I have seen some awakenings. A lot of times, like I've worked on education policies, getting some educational policies, but in terms of moving towards revolution, I have to say I've been very much a failure. So if I talk about, my efforts in veganism and promoting veganism, I've had a lot of successes in getting black people to convert to veganism and address chronic diseases. In urban agriculture, me and Dita have taught literally hundreds of young black people how to cultivate lands in urban and limited land space to cultivate organic, healthy food. I have some things that I'm proud of in terms of that. And my wife and I had a very successful progressive media company where we've gotten, the voices of Mackie and Dr. Ben and Amos Wilson out to thousands of people around the country through Bug Media, Black Urban Guerrilla, Bug Media resources. I raised 2 healthy, vibrant black boys. I'm very proud of that. So I have some successes, but as far as my goal for Pan-African unification, Pan-African awakening, Pan-African unification, and Pan-African revolution, I feel like I'm losing ground. Not me personally, but us as a people. I'm doing all that I can and keep revisiting the drawing board, but that's probably not where I'm not. So a lot of these reformist and progressive things I've done, I've wanted to do them for the sake of revolution. Here in Chicago, I've opened 2 cooperative enterprises using socialistic and African communal values to develop. So, I could talk about that. But the one thing I say, one method that I would ask you to copy from me is, number 1, be secular in your organizing. You have to be secular. Number 2, be rational in your analysis. Rational in your analysis and secular. So don't come up with these grand views, and that helps you to avoid your organizational structures disintegrating into cultism. And so secular and rational, even if you fail, how you fail, you will have valuable lessons there. And what I found is when we do secular and rational organizing, even if the organization dissipates or disintegrates or consciously breaks apart, those bonds, I still have friendship. There's a lot of people I've organized with just in the 10 years I've been here in Chicago. There's a lot of people I organize with, I still have friendly and healthy relationships with. So as we meet each other and come together on other projects and things of that nature, there's no hostility there because we didn't get into the recesses of belief and feelings. Everything we did was laid out open. So you got to be open. You got to be ongoing dialogue, ongoing critique and dissection, and you must be secular and rational. So those are the things I would ask anybody to copy. But beyond that, organize, because I get people that call me from all over the place, say, what should I do? You have to assess where you are. You have to, on your local organizing and national, even regional organizing, you have to kind of do what I call diagnostics. You have to look at the strengths, the potential, the deficits, and things of that nature. So when you want to organize on a local level, there is some preliminary work you have to do. But fortunately, most places that have Black populations have so many deficits. By the time you do your assessment, almost anything you're interested in doing, I don't care if it's theater, I don't care if it's martial training, I don't care if it's economic development, small cooperative businesses, there'll probably be a hole or a niche that you can fill. And I've engaged in all those things. We had freedom fighters here where I was really trying to work towards a Black progressive militia, a Black, basically a Black militia. And militias aren't just about fighting with guns and shooting people. Militias are about providing aid in disaster areas and things of that nature. That was really a lot of good work we did there, even though nothing, but I guess sometimes my ambitions outstretch what's really possible. But that's it. And then we have the African World Coalition, which I was working towards up until the pandemic, which I was building towards and meeting about, cultivating this African World Coalition. So I hope to get back on that, the AWC, very soon, because when the pandemic hit, I started focusing more on trying to just maintain my media output and things of that nature, because so many things withdraw and financial problems, shit. But I'm still optimistic. You don't retire, as revolutionaries don't retire, and there's no age limit, so got plenty of time. As long as I stay fit and healthy. Jordan Merrill. Cynical. I live in Ohio. I don't even have friends because they talk about they don't want to hear that Black poor righteous teacher. Shout out to Wise Intelligence. I want to hear the poor righteous teacher. Stuff. And I don't even have friends because I read and think, oh, you have a friend. You have a friend in me. I won't sing that song from the story, but you have a friend in me. If you need somebody, give me a call. You got my contact information. Holla if you ever in Chicago. I hope I'm never again in Ohio. My brother, he played basketball for Ohio State, so he got married in Ohio and graduated from Ohio State. So those are the two times I went there for my brother's wedding, and I went there for his graduation, and that's it. Bone Thugs and Harmony. Ohio's a scary place. Bone Thugs and Harmony been rapping for 20, 30 years, got millions of dollars, and they still look broke. That's how tough Ohio is. Even y'all millionaires look struggle. Braids, fuzzy braids and shit. But anyway, shout out to Black people in Ohio. Y'all stronger than me. But Sean, you can holler at your boy. You got a friend over here. Oh, and holler at James too. Okay, Tito. A few Q&As Black. Someone asked if there were any radical revolutionary organizations you supported, but you said no. Why do you feel that there aren't any to measure up? I ain't saying they aren't. I just don't know about them. But then again, I'm a hater. I'm a hater from the Himalaya. I'm a player hater extraordinaire. So maybe they are out there. There are groups that aren't necessarily like I really like Asada's Daughters here in Chicago. I like Ujama Medics. They do really, really good work. So there are some groups, but the problem is the organizations that actually do the work, that grind it out. There's a brother I know in Brooklyn, I've been talking to him. I haven't heard from him in a couple of months, but I was talking to him, and he's cultivating a group based on, Marxist dialectics analysis. He's starting a group there, and developing cooperative socialistic and communistic enterprises in New York. So I'm watching that grow up and watching him do that work from a distance. So there are groups, but like every single like well-known and recognized group on a national scale is for shit. You know. So I ain't saying they don't exist. I'm just saying I'm out of the loop. But if you know of some and you send them my way, I will definitely support them and big them up. But here in the United States, most of the people, Black Lives Matter, Nation of Islam, you just had the NAACP awards and NAACP. Most of the recognized groups here, the National Action Network, I can't vouch for them. And there's some other groups that I was once a member of. I ain't going to say the name because I don't want to be disrespected, because many of my elders and mentors are still in those groups. But I can't send people their way. They got some shit that I think they never worked out. That were problems that were there when I was there. So I just want to be sincere in my responses. So that's why if I can't really say a group that I really like, yeah, this is a revolutionary radical group that I would send people to, But I will be honest. If somebody asks me about the group and I'm like, I don't know about that group, or I know about that group and here's why I won't list it, then I'm willing to do that too. But y'all got to name the names. I'm not. New Black Panther Party. Yeah. And what was that other group that was popular? That Balloon Gong dude, that wife beater. The Black Decency Movement, that neo-proto-fascist group. Straight Black Pride, another proto-fascist demagogue group. Just a lot of these groups we make popular are shitty as hell. I don't know why we love shitty groups so much. Yeah, what are your thoughts on All African People's Revolutionary Party? I like the A. It's funny how close the All African People's RP is a lot like the Association of Retired Persons. I think that it was a great group coming out of the 60s Black Power era into the 70s and 80s. I just think the organization needs to better modernization. I think that they are that the All African People's Revolutionary Party is kind of a victim of its own success. I have great respect for the what they've done for us as a people and what they stand for, but they seem to be like kind of stuck in the past. That's also what I would say about like in Cobra. I would say that about in Cobra, where in Cobra was the true reparations organization, and they let a con woman like Yvette come and steal their thunder. The National Black United Front, where I see the National Black United Front has, problem is their leadership had to die off. I think a lot of these organizations needs to be consciously and deliberately recycling leadership. A lot of times, like Conrad, who was the national chairman of the National Black United Front, he stepped down from that position like just a few years before he died, when he should have stepped down 20, 30 years before that, if not 40 years before that. So these leader for life and a lot of times they had these good charters that were really good and really effective. The charters and their protocols are really good from 40 years ago. But even the U.S. Constitution has amendments, dozens of amendments. You have black charters that haven't been amended since the founding. So I think that the All African People's Revolution is a good group. They have a good goal, a very good goal. They have a really good, strong track record. But I've gone to some of their events here at the Dusabo Museum, and it just seems all I can think. The first word that comes to mind is stagnant. You have to be revolutionary internally. You can't say I want revolution in society when you're not even willing to have a revolution within your own group. Not to tear them down. I say this like what you call it says. This is criticism with affection. Let me say, anyone see the amazing Lucas live stream last night? No, I didn't. You can share the link if you really think it's something we should see. Arab religion paved the way for slavery in the first place. Why you gotta say Arab religion? There are quite a few Arab religions. Actually, before Islam became predominant, there were the nomadic Bedouins were polytheistic, and Allah was one of many gods. It's really, I had a book on the history of Islam. I think it's up front. But anyway, it's Islam. Don't say, what do you say, Arab religion. Say Islam. Because a lot of people be like, oh, Islam is an African religion. No, name the religion. No, it's like people who look like me. I'm people that talk indirect. Not coming down. I'm just saying, say Islam paved the way for slavery. But slavery pre-exists Islam. You know, if you go back to the Greeks and Romans. Or even if you look at, did y'all hear that snap? Crack? Anyway, even if you, that's why I'm sitting here, Hunts. Let me use proper posture. Even if you look at the Greeks and the Romans, if you read Destruction of Black Civilization, their attempts to colonize our land and enslave our people predate Islam. But Islam was the first, most successful transcontinental slave route and slave enterprise. So yes, don't say Arab religion, say Islam. Because most Muslims in 2022 aren't Arab. You got more Muslims in Indonesia. There's more Asian Muslims than Arab Muslims. But they got to know you're following a slave religion. Because a lot of people are like, oh, that's the Arab religion. I'm not Arab. Therefore, I'm exempt. No. Jabbo Jones, who changed your name to Jabbo X, you're in a slave religion. So say Islam, not Arab religion. And there are other, Zoroastrianism and other Arab religions outside of Islam. So you got to be specific when you make such statements. I compel you. I request of you. Which vegan activist organization would you recommend to support? Hoping you can join us at Black Vegan Fest in Brooklyn this summer. I'd love to come to Black Vegan Fest. I don't know, because with my veganism, I promote veganism in every group, and I've had vegan catering companies and vegan restaurants. Vegan instructions, and I've given lectures on veganism and chronic disease and veganism in the Black community. So I'm really down for veganism, but as far as vegan organizations, there's one I like, which is vegan hip hop. I just like their articles and stuff. And there's another one I like, but it's not Black, is Direct Action Everywhere. Like, this is a blog I like. The Vegan Hip Hop Movement at Blogspot. They have some really good stuff and some really good takes. I like this. And then there's another one. But I ain't saying support this. You can support vegan hip hop. It's a brother behind that. I like this group. Just seeing what they do and their efforts. But it's not blacks, and they got enough money. White folks we already paid white folks everything we should give them. But I like their push. If you've ever been like I like what they do. It's not a black group, but it's a vegan group, and I like their approach. Tell you the truth, I know y'all not gonna like to hear this. I ain't even mad at PETA. I like PETA, pisses people off. I ain't even mad at PETA. I support animal rights. And like I said, this isn't a group I say you support, they'll be okay. But I think this group is defunct. Yeah, I think that group. But this is an underground group. This is the last one. There's this group called Animal Liberation Front, ALF. I like their shit. These are the dudes, and they don't want your support. These are the guys that put on the black hoods and kick down and break animals out of feedlots and out of slaughterhouses. So that's it. But I ain't saying support. You can support vegan hip hop, but those other two groups, they all right without black folks' money. But anyway, I go to I was just in Brooklyn. You know, I lived in Brooklyn for 10 years. I met my wife in Brooklyn. I love Brooklyn. So any excuse I can have to go to Brooklyn, I'll take it. So yeah, send me an invite. I'll be there. Dr. Clark said even said it, we're a nation within a nation trying to find nationality. Yes, it's a tragic, sad truth. Oh, it's 9:30. It's time to wrap this up. I'm gonna try to do a lightning round, which never seems to work, but I'm gonna try to do it. I'm gonna answer short answers now. Are Jews basically European Hebrews? They're Europeans. You know, as far as Hebrews, that's a made-up group. Judaism is made up out of thin air. There, Moses never lived. There's no such. Moses is a fully fictional character. The bondage in Israel is bondage. The bondage in Egypt is fully fictional. Crossing the Red Sea, God is fiction. Yahweh is fiction. People being chosen is fiction. David from King David, all fiction. The walls of Jericho, all fiction. So they're just white people who are living according to one fiction as opposed to another fiction. Now, the Jews in Europe can be identified as an ethnic group, a very distinct ethnic group like the Roma people, but the Hebrews, it's just made up shit. And no, they aren't. But you know, it's all made up. Are there white people of Hebrew faith that are not Jews? No, I think you have to be. I think one requires. I don't think there's any other Hebrew faith. You know, and it's based on the Bible. Like the Bible groups are made up. Like there's a comic book I like. Me and my sons are watching the Avengers cartoons, and there's a group called Hydra, and I'm a member of Hydra. What the fuck does that mean? You know. And it's just people tell this lie and regurgitate these myths over and over and over to that's who they become. But, you know, it's based on Exodus, which has never happened. So it's all fiction. And we all, just like money, like paper money, we people fighting and killing each other over fictions. So you can be Hebrew or Semitic and not Jewish. That is possible. But it's still made up. So yes, just to be direct, you can be a white Hebrew. I don't know if there's any, again, white Hebrews. There's so many fucking myths together. It's just you can be Hebrew and not Jewish, or Semitic and not Jewish. As far as white Hebrew, I don't know if you can be I guess you can be a white Hebrew and not Jewish? I guess so. I really don't know about that. That's just so many myths stacked on top of each other. You know, can you be a radioactive mutant superhero member of, you know, the X-Men? I don't know. It's all fiction. I guess so. Yeah, anything is possible. I'll say yes. I'll say yes, you can. The Jews, European Hebrews, there's no such thing as a European Hebrew. You can't be a European and a Hebrew, even though we have European Hebrews, because it's made up. So you can be that. That's like me saying, you know, I am saved sinner. So God has saved me, and I will die and go to heaven. But I am also sin. And it's like sin is made up. There's no such thing as sin. There's no such thing as being saved. And there's no such thing as heaven. So can I be a black saved sinner? Yeah, I can, if I'm going to be fiction. But you say, can I fly? No, because gravity can be verified whether or not I fly, because I can jump off the roof. But can you really verify Hebrew and all that? Not really, because it's made up. Nobody crossed. There were no Hebrews ever. So anybody who says they're Hebrew is basically a Hebrew because it's made up. It's made up. So are you an X-Man or an Avenger? Can you be both an X-Man and an Avenger? Can you be a mutant without the X gene? Like, that shit is so made up, and it blows my mind. People sit here and debate, and we got whole institutions built around these goddamn lies. But they're lies. It's made up. But they're lies that validate people's delusions, and to challenge people's delusions gives them physical discomfort. And that's light. Oh, but we're lightning round. That shit is just awesome. Black people fight you like third monkey fighting it. Stop it, Zara. Third monkey getting on. That's funny. I haven't heard that one. ADOS. Yeah, I hate ADOS. Hate, 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 hate. Hey, Creamer's in the house. Yes. Scholars in the house. That's why I have to sit up and act like I know what I'm doing when I got other scholars watching me, judging me. Abraham Lincoln made efforts to export Africans. Yes, he did. He also said that if he could preserve the Union without liberating the slaves, he would have did it. Lincoln was no friend of ours. You know, he wasn't the worst white man, but he wasn't a white man worthy of gratitude from us. He did what he did to preserve the Union and to bring the United States into, trade and standing within the other nations that had already abolished slavery. It was not a love for us. And that's why we were re-enslaved in less than a generation after being emancipated. Was Du Bois' parents Haitian? I don't know. Was he? I wouldn't be surprised. That's a good question. That's something I might have to look into, just out of curiosity. You know, me and Du Bois have a love-hate relationship. I really respect his scholarship, but I didn't like his politics. So, heritage. I'm gonna look into that just for my own curiosity. Not that I think it's that relevant, but it is relevant. Okay. That's where we get reggaeton from Panamanian Africans. Yeah, them Panamanian Africans. There's a lot of Panamanians in New York. That's where I knew them from. And we lightning around in y'all. Wow, she hate Black Americans not continuing that Pan-African idea. She loves Zaddy. Well, you'll find a lot of African immigrants are under the impression, especially coming here from refugees, that look at U.S. as the savior and Black Americans as an ongoing threat to them. Because, I mean, they consume the same propaganda media and they listen to Jay-Z talk about gangsterism and other rappers. So, it's not hard to understand. I mean, and our misconceptions and hostilities towards our brothers and sisters on the continent, we got it too. It's from all places. How many more? Right. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of recent immigrants and Africans who've been here in generations. And the one thing about it is America's really quick to show Africans that they are Black, because I've had Africans tell me, I'm Black, I'm African, I'm not Black, and they learn real quick, like, oh, right, wait a second, so. All right. Diallo and family. Yeah, we African. I'm an African, and I know what's happening. I think that's it. I'm gonna work my way up because people just commenting. My brother, what country in Africa would you love to visit? My thing is, let me think. I'd like to go to Nigeria because they make the best music, and my wife really loves fufu, vegan fufu. I'd like to go to Ethiopia, just for the historical monuments and the landscape. I'd actually like to visit South Africa to get a up close update in post apartheid situation there. And I debate with a lot of South Africans online. I'd like to go to Kenya and curse out some Kenyans that are always getting in my, bickering with me. So, the place I go in Africa, it's not even for heritage or good reasons. I just want to go to the countries in Africa where there's people there I need to cuss out and face to face. I'm a terrible person. But yeah, I think my first stop on the African continent, since they gave me an invite, is going to be Lagos. That'll be my first stop after the pandemic. What group would you join, Diallo? Why don't you take your talents to one of them? I would join the group that invited me, or that if I saw that I could make a contribution to. But like I said, I want to build the African World Coalition. But if I got invited to join a group, I assess it and accept the invitation. But don't nobody want me, man. People just be hating on me. What about Hebrew Israelites? The Hebrew Israelites is a violent cult. It is a violent and divisive cult. They believe that Africans are responsible for our own enslavement, that our enslavement was ordained by God, and that we are a separate and superior people to the brothers and sisters who we were left on the continent. They believe that women and children are property, and that women and children who are disobedient can be killed by their owner, i.e., father or spouse. Their beliefs are extremely regressive and toxic and anti-black. And so it kind of bothers me that so many people admire the Black Hebrews because they think that they are strong. They demonstrate strong manhood. And when they talk of that rhetoric of protecting Black women and we need to protect Black children, they say in their rhetoric, but you don't understand what they mean. Or they're talking about protecting property that they own, not protecting you to be yourself or allowing you to express yourself. So it is a very regressive, backwards, and toxic group. And then you have many factions of Black Hebrews, and you have Black Hebrews who say, well, we don't believe like them people and we don't believe like that people. But, if you're in a hive and you're contributing to the honeycombs, you're part of it. Even if you ain't stinging people, you're part of facilitating it. But it is a cult that is made up, another just completely made up things. Oh, we are the Black Hebrews. We are not Black Hebrews. We are not part of the 12 tribes. None of the King James Bible, or the Torah, none of that shit is true. It's all made up, and it's Black people who have damaged egos trying to make themselves feel special by mimicking a group of delusional white people. And we can't adopt, and that same thing goes for Black Muslims and the Nation of Islam. It's just Black people adopting something that our oppressors brought around and trying to Blackify it. So the Black Hebrews are just some Black people in the United States who adopted a regressive ideology and tried to make it Black or apply it to the Black condition. Oh, yeah. When I was in Missouri, I used to go out and even here in Chicago, there are a lot of berry trees and crabapple trees and other herbs and stuff. Who was it? There was somebody here doing herb trips and through the various nature preserves here in Chicago. Was that Fanta? Was that you, Fanta? And I know Yendez in Brooklyn, New York, Ancient Blends. You can go with her and she'll take you through the green areas around New York and Prospect Park and show you the edible plants and the medicinal plants there. Shout out to Yendez. I got to see her this winter when I was in New York and got me some good Ancient Blend shea butter. Same thing, Hebrew Israelites, made up shit that we need to leave alone. All right, that's it. I'm gonna wrap this up, y'all. I appreciate everyone being here with me this evening. The book reviews are coming back. They fell off for a while because my software and the software I used to make the videos was crashing. I was having all kind of issues. But anyway, I'm very happy to be back. I got 3 book reviews in the kitty, and they were so if you like my book reviews, which y'all seem to like, my book reviews get more views than anything. Daddy Buck, how much would you like for whatever you could spare without hardship to yourself? I'm a very humble man of humble means, so whatever you can or are willing to spare, I greatly appreciate it. But I don't want to put a number on it, because if I say too little, I'm gonna be mad at myself, and if I say too much, I'll be disappointed in myself. So I'd like to leave whatever the Lord puts on your heart. I greatly appreciate and need it. So thank you, Daddy Buck. Whatever you're able to give to support that doesn't bring about hardship for you and support for me, I greatly, greatly appreciate it. What somebody say something about Haiti? My best friend of 25 years is Haitian, so I was really just being extra adjusting myself. Okay. All right, that's it. I said $50 last time. Okay. Yeah. Hey. That's a lot. Shout out. Hook a brother up. I would like and appreciate that very much so. So yes, $50. That's a whole lot. That's like, you know, 5 times my normal contribution. So yeah, but like I said, yeah, that's a lot. So thank you for the contributions and support. Of course, you can follow me across social media at Diallo Kenyatta. I got a Tumblr blog where I put like longer form essays. I'm on Twitter where I just make my little Twitter rants. Of course, please subscribe to my YouTube where I put all my videos. And starting in March, I talked to the radio station. I hope to be back after this Omicron. Just letting these, the numbers are going down here as far as coronavirus. My whole family, immediate family here in the house has managed to stay COVID negative. But I do have my beloved relatives very close to me who have tested positive for COVID in the last couple of months. And I'm just, very concerned for them. And so I do want you to stay safe. I will continue to stay safe. But all that to say, I hope to be back broadcasting. If you like catching my radio show, I will be back broadcasting on the air the first Monday in March and in perpetuity beyond that. I also was on, I will be speaking on a presentation for the Black Psychologist of Chicago. The chairman, Dr. Obari, has invited me to speak. They're doing a special on Dr. Bobby E. Wright, and he wanted to invite some non-psychologists, people who, like my area of formal education and expertise is political science and public policy. So he's trying to invite diverse groups to speak about Bobby E. Wright, because Dr. Bobby E. Wright was a psychologist, but his scholarship and his impact goes well beyond psychology into the arena of politics and culture and Black revolution. So anyway, I'm very fortunate. I'll be on the panel with some very, very brilliant people. So I'm really looking forward to that. So you can follow me at Diallo Kenyatta, and as soon as I get the promo and all that for speaking, I definitely will. I got another invite, but I just have, I'll be posting everything. I'll be posting everything. I had a presentation I just did last Monday. It's this group that I heard about. They've been around for a while, but I'm just hearing about them, and I don't know why. Let's see if I can pull that up, the link to that, because there was a very lively discussion to be had. A lot of interesting inputs there. But the Colored Only Cafe. So if you go to Colored Only Cafe, and I'm trying to pull it up with my computer. Oh, here it is. Every Wednesday night. So the Colored Only Cafe here. I was on their Wednesday night broadcast. February 7th. Yeah, I think this is it. Is this it? I just yeah, that's the sister that was on there. Oh, there I am, everybody. That's me right there. But I was there, so you can go to Colored Only Cafe on their join their group. Oh, let me just go on and join right now. All right, you go join their group like I just did. I just heard about them, but their program is really good, and I was on there. So please go there and is that the one that's on? I don't understand that question. But anyway, yeah, that's it. That's the one that's on there. But anyway, thank everybody. I know I just don't want to say the goodbye to y'all. Y'all my friends, especially Sean Quo. Give me a holler if you want to holler. Oh, also I'm on Xbox. Right now I'm playing Outriders, every weekend. I play Outriders, and I play Xbox and PC games. So you want to hang out, Sean? Holla at your boy. We find something to do. But I'm gonna go finish this tea and settle in for the evening, and I will see y'all Friday and Monday. Good evening. And then I'll give y'all the dates and everything. Hopefully next Wednesday. I have another speaking engagement, but they just sent me this long email, like paragraphs, but I don't remember the date because it was so much other stuff. But anyway, yeah, and on Xbox, I'm Mace, Mace Zulu, Mace Zulu on Xbox. If you want to send me a connect, I'll be on there. Right now, I'm playing Outriders. It takes me like a year to get through a game because I don't have much time to play. But when I do have time to play, you're welcome to join me. I try to work in on Sunday when I'm drinking my coffee. My wife only lets me have coffee twice a week, Wednesdays and Sundays. But then she tried to swindle me out. Like today, she had a dental appointment, so she swindled me out of my coffee today. But she promised me coffee and a donut tomorrow. So, I'll let y'all know if she come through or not, because she's always trying to suppress my stimulants. So Saturday's my coffee day too. I like to sit and sip my oat milk latte and play video games. So Saturday afternoons or mornings. But anyway, enough about me. You ain't staying single, because you know how I know you're not staying single, James? You be in that gym lifting them weights like no tomorrow. Like no tomorrow. My wife and I were just looking at this cheesy dating show. And she was like, look at that nice young man with his muscles. I didn't know my wife was into muscles. I just learned today that my wife was into muscles. If I had known, I'd have went and got her some muscles on me. So I might have to start doing push-ups or something. But James, you out here trying to catch. You in that gym. You should see this dude. He's built like. So, and then he's trying to play like he's not doing it for the ladies. Why else would you be in the gym like that, James? Stop lying to everybody. But anyway, good night. Good night. And I don't want to get embarrassed. My wife come knock on the door and talk about come on out. So I'm going to get out of here before she call me. So good night. And thank you for everyone for the support. I am humble and grateful that you take the time to listen and engage with me. And I'll see y'all soon. Good night.